Hi, from a backyard in Anchorage, Alaska. We're having a wonderful trip. We wanted to share something with you guys that we shot about a month ago. A little setup. There's a lot of information out there about why to be vegan.
And there's so much information about what to eat when you do go vegan.
But what about resources about how to be vegan when it comes to our relationships? How do we talk about this subject, which can be touchy and often deeply felt on the vegan side, without creating distance, without judging harshly, and arguing with our friends, family, and people who we love, something I have a little bit of experience in.
To answer that question, Dr. Melanie Joy has written a new book titled Beyond Beliefs, a guide to improving relationships and communications for vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters.
Dr. Joy is a vegan activist and a social psychologist. She's given speeches around the world, and her last book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, has become a very influential text in the vegan movement. So when we got the opportunity to talk to her about her new book, we jumped on it. And so this is an edited version of our conversation. It's basically an introduction to the main concepts of her new book, which we would recommend for anybody who's interested, vegan or non-vegan, in better communication.
In any subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect for us, really.
Mm-hmm.
We fight all the time, but since we've read this book, we fight a little bit less.
Yay.
And so now we give you Dr. Melanie Joy. It's
Hi.
an honor to meet you and be talking with you.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure for me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your vegan journey and then what led you to write your new book, Beyond Beliefs?
Sure. I became vegetarian back in 1989. Before people realized that you could actually be, or a lot of people realized that you could actually be healthy or live a normal life and be vegetarian, and then vegan shortly thereafter. So I was 23 at the time. And I became vegetarian because I had gotten sick eating a contaminated hamburger. I wound up in the hospital, and I was just turned off by meat and really disgusted. And so I kind of became vegetarian by accident. Of course, I was researching information about how to be vegetarian, like what to cook. And in that process, I learned about animal agriculture and, all of the implications of that. And, decided that I wanted to make a conscious decision to identify as a vegetarian and not be a part of that. And so I was really shocked and horrified. But then what shocked and horrified me perhaps even more was that nobody I talked to about what I had learned was willing to hear what I had to say. So I became very curious about the human psyche, as it were. I became very curious about how it is possible for people like myself who are rational and compassionate to just stop thinking and feeling when it comes to eating animals and other types of atrocities in the world, other behaviors that contribute to atrocities. And that was what led me to my work on the psychology of eating animals. And then my book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, emerged from that. What led me to write Beyond Beliefs was my work around carnism, which is the invisible belief system or ideology that conditions us to eat certain animals, which is what Why We Love Dogs is about, launched what became an international speaking tour for me. And I've been speaking about carnism all around the world, and also speaking to, about veganism. We run the Center for Effective Vegan Advocacy, and I've spoken with thousands and thousands of vegans and also vegetarians who have similar experiences in many ways, psychologically, relationally, and also many non-vegans, many meat eaters. And what I was hearing was the same everywhere I went in the world, over and over and over again, that people would say that becoming vegan was one of the most empowering choices of their life. And they would also say that with that choice came a breakdown in relationships and communication. And so I realized, as a former relationship coach and somebody who's worked in the field of relationships and really understands, we have enough literature now demonstrating that relationships are healthy, fulfilling, connected relationships. If we have them in our lives, we fare better in pretty much every aspect of life. We live longer. We are less likely to develop psychological problems. We're more successful in what we try to do. So you can imagine the impact on the vegan movement when there's an absence of these fulfilling, connected relationships.
Totally.
And imagine the impact of disrupted relationships.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote Beyond Beliefs.
When I went vegan, my worldview was completely changed. And then I wanted to share that with the people I was close to and ended up feeling alienated from them. My mom said I sounded like a religious person who was proselytizing. So what's a healthy and productive way for somebody who's newly vegan to tell their friends and family?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, as I write in my book, for vegans to commit to learning just the basics of effective communication. Effective communication is really a method and a set of skills, right? It's a method and a set of tools that can be learned by anyone. But you really have to learn it. You have to become literate. So I think it's important that people commit to this. In my book, I have a whole chapter on effective communication and resources for people who want to go further than that. When we are talking about veganism, we tend to be focusing on the ideas that we're talking about. And we have to really remember that underneath our different ideologies is a relationship between people. And that's where the focus really needs to be. So it really needs to be a focus on process rather than just content. Every communication has these two parts. The content is what we're talking about, and the process is how we're talking. When our process is healthy, we can communicate about just about anything without arguing. And when our process is unhealthy, we can't communicate about just about anything without arguing. And so a healthy process has as its goal mutual understanding. The goal of communication is to communicate what our thoughts and feelings are to another and to understand what their thoughts and feelings and often needs are. And so when people first become vegan, and they want to share this decision to become vegan, they can sit down and very honestly say, I've decided to become vegan. And I'm sharing this with you not to turn you vegan. A lot of people are, defended against this idea that they're, going to be converted or something. That's a whole other issue. Not to make your interpersonal relationships a forum for advocacy, but instead to simply share the truth of your experience in order that the other person understand what the world looks like through your eyes. I've decided to become vegan, and here's why. Make it about your story. And this is what the world looks like through my eyes, and invite them into that. And I'm sharing this with you, not to convert you, but so that you understand me. Because people can't have a connected relationship if there isn't understanding of who one another is.
Witnessing, as you call it, right?
Exactly.
Liz has been a great vegan ally.
Thanks.
And her family has been great, too. Since we've opened ourselves up on YouTube with our mixed diet relationship, one thing that we've experienced is another thing that a lot of new vegans encounter, which is criticism from other vegans for not being vegan enough.
Yeah, I really like that section in your book where sometimes the best way to go about it is to just encourage people to just do the best they can in terms of vegan decisions and try and make the most vegan decisions that they can in their own life. There's a lot of constant criticism of, if Liz isn't vegan yet, what's the point of this? If she knows everything, what's the point of all of this? Undervaluing what we're trying to convey, that a lot of people are new to veganism, don't know what to eat, and we're just trying to give them a safe space to talk about it and a safe space to be semi-vegan or try it out sometimes. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of thing for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad reality. It's not just around veganism. I mean, I wrote my book for vegan interactions just as much as for interactions between vegans and non-vegans, because as you point out, within the vegan community, communication is not always, in fact, frequently, it is not respectful, not as respectful as it could be, for sure, and that causes a lot of problems. I mean, people many of us, all of us, I shouldn't say all, but most of us have never been given the tools to communicate effectively and to really be self-observers so that we can recognize when we get triggered and why, and not let that color our reactions and our communications with others. And I think what you're describing it's both perfectionism and it's what I refer to as the trauma narrative. The story, when you get traumatized in particular, which many vegans are, from carrying around the awareness of the fact that we live in the midst of a global atrocity, a mass traumatic event. When we carry around this sense of traumatization from having seen what we've seen and knowing what we know, we can start to see the world as, made up of either victims, perpetrators, or heroes, and to start putting people into one of these, and animals, into one of these categories and having like really rigid boundaries in between. So there's this idea that if you're not a hero, and you're not, if you're not 100% vegan 100% of the time, you have to fit in one category. If you're not a victim, you're not an animal, a farmed animal, and you're not being a hero, meaning you're being 100% vegan 100% of the time, then you must be a perpetrator, and then to treat other people accordingly. It's not just a vegan tendency, it's a human tendency. This black and white thinking and this kind of perfectionistic all or nothing tendency. So, I advocate, as you pointed out, that people try to be as vegan as possible, because the world that we live in, we've inherited a very messy world, and it's not the ideal, and we have to live with and relate to the world as it is rather than as we wish it were. And if we really want people to move toward veganism, in my opinion, we're significantly more strategic if we advocate in a way that invites them into that conversation and encourages people to do whatever they can to reduce their consumption and celebrates these successes. And again, this doesn't preclude working for legislative change and bigger institutional change, which is really, really important work to be done. But people need to... I'm working on some new writing about this, talking about talking. How do we communicate with each other and about these important issues in a way that holds people accountable, raises awareness, and yet still honors their dignity? Yeah. And that's really the key, in my opinion, is honoring the dignity of the person you're communicating with and about.
This is such a necessary topic right now, because it seems like we have a communication breakdown in general. Is it like that in Germany as well?
It's, my German's not that good, but there are tendencies everywhere. It's a human problem. And my sense, and this is just very anecdotal, is that in the U.S., my experience is that in the U.S., the conversation is more polarized than it is here. It is also in the U.K. to some degree, but you see it here in Germany as well, this polarization. I would say that it's more extreme in the U.S. And so, so like I said, I've been doing some new writing, really specifically focused around how to communicate in a way that raises awareness and honors dignity in the process. And I think that will open up, hopefully, that help us to have more productive dialogues.
Why'd you move to Berlin?
I fell in love with a German, who I then married.
Oh,
so
lovely.
Was he vegan at the time?
Yeah, he was. He's the CEO of the organization we work at together, ProVeg International, and so I co-founded it with him also. And he was running it as a different organization before, and so we were colleagues before we started our relationship.
Nice.
What about in your family today? Do you still have close friends and family who are not vegan, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, most of my close friends are vegan. I have some people that I'm close to who are not vegan, just because my community is so vegan. Most of my family is not vegan. Some of them, my mother has become vegan, her husband's become vegan. Everybody in my family is a vegan ally, so, and this started years ago after I became vegan. It wasn't too long before Thanksgivings and Christmases and all of the dinners where we would get together. They just made them vegan because they figured, why not? Everybody could eat vegan, so we might as well do it. So they've been great vegan allies. But I do have close family members who are not vegan and close friends who are not vegan, and that doesn't impact our relationship in any significant way.
Do you have a coping strategy for staying sane and happy and healthy?
Honestly, having a healthy marriage helps. Having a good relationship, having at least one person in your life, who you feel like you've got a good connection with, is really important for people who don't have that, to really prioritize that. And, and also just everybody is different in terms of what kinds of coping strategies work for them. And so I have a talk also at, and I write about this in Beyond Beliefs too, really for sustainability, paying attention to yourself, knowing yourself and honoring your needs. And that will help you stay healthy and cope. And, above all, try to limit the amount of violent, traumatic imagery that you're exposed to, and ask other people not to expose you to that, so that you're not feeding the trauma.
What do you do when you're feeling really stressed out?
It depends on where I am in the world. And what I need. But, spending time, my husband and I might just like chill out and watch a silly movie and laugh. Humor is a big part of both of our coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So we often make jokes. I exercise regularly, and sometimes I'll go burn something off with a run. It depends, what I need at any given time. I might just need to talk to a good friend, and sometimes I might need to go to the gym.
Yeah. Well, the book is full of useful advice, much more than we have time to talk about here.
Yeah, I think everybody should pick it up just because it's great to give you context about just the way that it's kind of framed about how people relate, how relationships can get broken down. I really like the part about shame. You don't really think about that until you read it in the book, and you're like, oh wow, shame is such a driving force in our own personalities, in our own relationships. And then going through carnism, and then going through better ways how to handle these kinds of conversations. And I know that these kind of conversations are what trip up vegans and new vegans the most. So I think it's a great book.
We've already put it into practice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
talking
you.
to us, and thank you for everything that you do. It's really had a huge positive impact on the world, and we hope to continue this discussion further, because there really is a lot that I want to talk to you about. A lot of stuff.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure. Take
Have a
care.
good day.